What up, everybody? Big Herc 916 getting down fresh out. And, we got that prison talk cracking, man. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, share, support the channel. And, man, I got with me here today my man Sean. And, man, he came all the way out here from Santa Barbara. We're about to kick some game. And he has some stories to tell. So, Sean, man, I know you did time in the system, man. And you experienced some things, seen some things that you wouldn't want to have to relive. Thinking back, I mean, what was one of the craziest things that you actually witnessed in prison, man, as far as just the level of violence?
Yeah, so I remember my first week that I got to reception, which is Wasco in Bakersfield, California. I'm on the yard working out, and all of a sudden you hear the sirens going off, everyone's yelling to get down. So I get down, you see the cops and everyone running into the adjacent building. And you know something happened, right? But now we're out here for about 5 minutes, and then you see a stretcher coming by, and you see these nurses running. So you know when they're running that it's something serious. A lot of times they're walking and they're taking their time. But this was different. And they brought a guy out on the stretcher, and they're pumping oxygen into him, right? And so this didn't happen in front of me. It happened in the building right next to where I was located. But that guy died. He died later that day. And what happened was it was a 2-on-1 assault, a simple removal. Beat him up, get him out of the building. We don't want to see him here anymore, but he hit his head and he died. The two individuals, now we're looking at a life sentence. One was doing 16 months, the other was doing 3 years. So they had just got to reception.
Oh, man.
And now they're looking at a life sentence. And that right there just shows you the environment you're in, how quickly things can change for you, how quickly your life could be taken potentially, or how quickly you get washed up.
These guys hadn't even started their bid yet then, and they're just getting basically classified and already looking at a life sentence.
Yeah.
God, man, that's crazy, man. Now, at Wasco, man, when, at that reception center, was the politics, is the politics going very strong? I mean, I know in the state it's a lot different, man. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, in Wasco, we were locked down most of the time. We were locked down. I wasn't there for very long.
Okay.
I was there for 3 months. I got to the yard less than a handful of times.
Wow.
So we were locked in our cell for 90% of the time at that point.
And I've heard of some of the horror stories over there at Wasco and some of the other places in Bakersfield. I know somebody who was a detective out there in Bakersfield, and he said they had to go investigate a murder in one of the yards. And they said, literally, bro, this dude had gutted some dude and had like organs and shit strung across the cell. I'm like, God damn. I mean, what kind of sick people? You know what I'm saying? I mean, dude, some people just, this like you're protecting society. I mean, I know, in conversation, I've talked to guys, and after they left, I'm like, that dude done killed a couple people, man. This dude's he's really crazy, and you can see like very well spoken, articulate, but there's a dark streak. You ran across a lot of people like that.
I mean, you see people like that. You could tell, right? When you talk to them, when you look in their eyes. For me personally, I never had cellies like that. When I rolled up to Wasco, it was an older cat named Tattoo from Orange County. He was cool, man. We would work out. He was looking at a life sentence for a petty theft, his third strike. Oh. So he was sweating it. So he was stressed out all day, every day. And we would just talk, try to distract him. But I'll never forget one morning they took him back to court. And there was a lot of stuff going on in the system at that time with the third strike rule. And he ended up getting out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he did get out. Man. So that was one of the few cases where you actually see the person sweating it, thinking they're done, actually get their case or their term reversed and actually go home.
Wow.
But you don't really ever see that too often.
Now, when you were at Wasco, was there any push to make you click up, or were you able to kind of like do your thing and be neutral, or how'd that play out?
Yeah, for me personally at Wasco, I mean, I never felt pressured. We weren't out in the day room or on the yard enough to where there was a lot of, talking about that or an agenda being pushed at that point.
So where'd you go from Wasco?
So from Wasco, I went to Sentinel.
Okay, and what's Sentinel like?
So Sentinel, it's right on the border of Southern California and Arizona.
Okay.
When I got there, the yard was being turned over. They were sending everyone to Arizona, where I eventually did go.
Oh, wow. From California to Arizona?
Yeah, because the prison population was so overcrowded in California at that time.
Wow.
They were sending people out of state everywhere. They were going to Arizona, even Michigan, Mississippi. So they're contracting space in prisons, out of state private facilities. So, which wasn't a bad thing. Arizona was a lot different than California. I was at Sentinel for a couple months, and then they sent me to Arizona. And in Arizona, they don't have the regular COs. These are like rent-a-cops, right? These guys are getting paid like minimum wage to be there. They just kind of leave you alone. They're like security guards.
Okay.
The cells are bigger. You get access to a yard with some machine weights.
Yeah.
Which that's what I was all about.
The difference.
Yeah, and then I'll never forget walking in the day room, and you see guys with an Xbox out in the day room or in their cell. You could actually get an Xbox in Arizona and out-of-state prisons. So I was like, where am I at, right? Compared to Wasco, where you could touch both walls.
Yeah. Literally, like this.
Yeah, and you don't have much there to be in this more lavish setting, I guess you could say, for prison.
When you speak of that, it's almost like when I went from Lompoc USP to Sheridan, and I noticed that like the cells had a real sink, wood tables. You're like, man, it kind of lowers your barbaric or animalistic instinct to where you're locked up, but you're not as aggressive. And I think like that right there plays a significant fact on rehabilitation and your ability to want to change, because you're not in that harsh, cold environment like Lompoc. Dude, they had the old cells, you click back, or the little square little thing. And I mean, you had dudes in there doing 5 lives, and people were just like, the average time in there was 20 something years. So it's like, dude, it was a very dark, just low frequency type of place, and it was like, going to Sheridan was like going to a college campus, literally, not literally, but in a sense in prison, you're like, wow, man, it wasn't all the barbed wire and people pointing guns on the towers and stuff. So
yeah.
Is that kind of like going to Arizona with a transition like from Wasco there, like kind of blew your mind?
Absolutely. I mean, I looked at it as a blessing, honestly, because at that point I was really wanting to change my life. That was my main focus. In Wasco, you're locked down all day. So I would just read, write, and exercise, and that was my daily routine. But like you said, it's still the environment. The cells are small. It's just, you can feel the negative energy as soon as you walk in that building. It was like night and day. When I walked in the building in Arizona, it was bigger. It was painted, right? The cells are bigger.
Yeah.
The officers, the COs, they talk to you differently.
Wow.
It was just a completely different energy.
That's a great point you said about the COs and conversation, because I remember when I went to California City, which was just a holdover, there was a CO there, and he's like, oh man, you work out, man. Oh man, we start talking. He's kind of cool, and then he'd be cool. Somebody slide me a protein bar or something. You know what I mean? Because he can kind of feel for my position, knowing that I used to bodybuild and work out. So he was like, he can relate. Where you go to, once you get to the actual, USP or into the guards, it's a totally different animal. The guards are on some politics, and depending on what's the dominant gang in that institution, they back that gang. Like if it's a Southern Institute, man, they pretty much are making things happen with that particular clique. So it's definitely different, and I think the way people treat you also is how you respond. It's almost like being in an abusive relationship. If you're being abused, you're very angry and your stress level. So like going to Arizona, I would only imagine, you said the guards talked to you, so it kind of made you feel more human. Because, once you lose that ability to feel human, it's like you can't really, it's hard for you to relate, and then you can do things with no conscience. You're like, so what?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a completely different feeling. Going from, county to reception to even Sentinel that short time, you don't talk to the guards. You don't talk to them unless you have to. They ask you a question.
Yeah.
Right, in Arizona, they treated you more like just a person. And then we had those machine weights on the yard, so I was all about working out. And they would see my discipline. They'd see my consistency, and I was in good shape. Then a lot of the guys were younger too. So they'd ask me questions about working out, or even ask me like little tips and pointers, right? So you felt almost like you were talking to someone out here in society versus, they walk you back to the cell and lock you in there, but it just felt different. So being there, and then I was enrolled into a drug program there because I had prior drug charges when I was younger, and they throw anyone into those programs to fill up the seats, right? So that was a blessing too, because now I was out of the cell more. I was interacting with counselors. I was focused on things that were positive and productive. And I was able to start turning that time of incarceration into productive years of my life versus just wasting away a lot of my life previously.
And while you were there, did you see much violence, or was it much more conducive to, like you said, a learning environment? Did it flip as far as in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, there would definitely be incidents that took place, but they weren't frequent. They weren't every day or multiple times a week.
Yeah.
It was a much different environment. A lot of the people in those programs did want to rehabilitate,
Okay.
and they were focused on bettering themselves. You still had people who didn't want to be there and who were combative, but it was a much different scenario and situation.
You know, I always say, man, if you want to really, for one, change your prison system, first, I would say start with the community and just doing outreach programs with kids before they get to that point. Yeah. Giving you other outlets, opportunities, exposure to whether it be a trade or a profession that you maybe never heard of. I mean, growing up, I never met a lawyer or a doctor or, just on TV, you've seen that stuff. So, or anybody who was a stockbroker. So those are fantasy jobs. But I think that exposure definitely makes a difference. And then going inside the prison, having that environment where, say, look, man, if you want a program, you can come to this prison. If you want to just go ahead and be a gangbanger and whatever, you don't care, then go over here. Because that way you don't mix the two, because this influences the positive over here. And so some guys, through peer pressure, get caught up, and then they end up doing things. And then, like you said, you go in there and, in some institutions, then the guys say, well, you got to go do this. And now you're put in a messed up position, but you don't really want to. But if you don't do it, you're going to get smashed. So, the whole prison, culture, and these guys talking about reform is so ass backwards, man, because they're not really trying to reform. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really want to reform, then your stock price will go down. You would lose. You're not making. There's no gains in the people who are the shareholders. So you say that, but then if now these shareholders, where are you going to put their money at? Yeah. You can put them in the community centers and make just as much money if the kids are learning and now they're getting jobs and now those jobs return revenues to the shareholders. That would be a great option. But these people, the private prisons, CAA, Wackenhut, Unicorn, they make money off of people being in there. And I know you even seen in some of the jobs in prison, they're making stuff for the streets.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the one guy told me they ran in Arizona, they had an actual call center in prison.
Wow. And I mean, most of those jobs you're getting paid 25 cents an hour, maybe $1.
No, this guy said the top guy at the call center made six figures. And then the attorney, the U.S. attorney or the state attorney that prosecuted him, found out, and the fact that he had been doing phone fraud before, but he was good at it, but he was making legit, They made them put a cap on what these guys could make because he would get bonuses and all this stuff. These dudes were making six figures in a call.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. I couldn't believe it.
That's crazy.
He said, dude, they were literally going there and they'd have like boiler room, meetings and pumped up. And they would be calling on the phone. He said, dude, they were killing it. And the guy who had the contract with the prison, of course, the warden gets kickback. Everybody gets kickbacks.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But so if he was making close to six figures, you can imagine what the dude who ran the call center was making.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude,
Yeah.
So it's crazy, man, when you look at, because I mean, I've met some guys in prison. It's like these dudes are so talented and intelligent, even though they caught a dope case or a robbery, whatever. But if they were on the streets, these guys would be millionaires.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the felon that people, oh, you're a felon, but these guys are intelligent.
Yeah, they're intelligent. I mean, you should see, the stuff that people make in there. They're creative, right?
Oh,
the
man,
artists.
crazy.
Yeah, you got guys in there that have so much talent and ability. I think maybe just they didn't have the opportunities in life, or they don't believe in themselves, or now they're labeled as a felon, right? But that stuff is starting to change now too, with the way technology and the world is. You could be a felon and still get out and do some amazing things with your life, right? You just have to believe in yourself. You have to sharpen yourself and develop some skills that are valuable, right? And that you can learn to market. But there's definitely opportunities, and that's one of the things that I'm on a mission to do, is bring that awareness to guys who are just getting out, or even people that haven't gone to prison that just are settling for less than they're capable.
Yeah.
To know that there's opportunities for you out there. There's ways that you can make that money, provide that life, even though you didn't come from that type of environment or you haven't seen it. You know, a lot of it's the mindset and being able to start believing in it before you can really produce it in your own life.
I think a big part of that also is exposure, like what you're exposed to. Like for myself, once I got in prison and I had time to reflect and I just like meditated and I thought back to all the things I had access to that I didn't really take advantage of at the time because I didn't know how, or I was just maybe ignorant of the fact. And that gave me a place to strive for when I got out, which a lot of guys, you know, I would talk to guys in there, you know, they're like, oh, Big Eric, man, you know, you ever hooked up with a Mexican girl? I'm like, yeah. You ever hooked up with a white girl? Yeah. You ever been over here? Yeah. They're like, damn, man. You know, and these dudes, they've never been nowhere. They never interacted with a white person. They never talked to a Mexican person. They've never been to the beach or on a boat, you know, or, you know, did these different things. You know, I had did quite a few different things before I got locked up. So it wasn't like I didn't have a certain amount of exposure. But when you think about that and you go back, wow, man, you know, maybe my life, I can do all these other things. But when you, like you said, you grew up in a project or a block that you only went to the local store and you did this and that, and you didn't have, you know, you never had that opportunity to talk to a guy who maybe was a Series 7 broker. And this guy, you know, was a beast and he could articulate well on the phone, and he was making, you know, 50 grand a month just on a telephone making calls. Or this guy over here who was an engineer who maybe worked for, you know, Ford, and he designed the suspension components. I mean, when you get around people like that, you're like, it's like, dude, I never thought about that. And like you said, a lot of these guys had that potential. So I think that's one of the major things too, as far as seeing that before you get caught up and, you know, guys getting out, taking advantage of it, but even better yet, trying to catch these young people before they go in so that they can experiment with these different ideas and opportunities before they throw their life away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your environment dictates the perspective you view the world and yourself, right? And if you grew up in an environment, and this is what happened to me, I grew up in a nice area, Santa Barbara, but in my household, what I saw was much different than that lavish environment. You know, I come from a broken home where there was drug and alcohol addiction, and that's what I saw every day. There was a lot of love in my family, but there was a lot of dysfunction too. And we didn't have money. So growing up, I never thought I could earn $1 million. I never believed that I could run my own business or do these things that I'm working towards doing now, because I wasn't seeing it, so I didn't believe it. So like you're saying, if we can start getting, you know, events together, conferences, to reach people in areas where they don't have that type of leadership, or they don't have those examples. And that's one of the missions I'm on right now, is the Convicted Conference, right? Which we are going to start doing in different locations, different cities, to start providing resources, start telling our stories of redemption, of coming from the bottom and working our way to the top, and showing these younger people or convicts, felons, what's capable, right? With the right game plan, with the right mindset and the right resources. And then when those individuals have those resources or see what's being done from people who have similar stories or backgrounds as them, they start to believe it's possible. And from there, a lot of change can take place.
And I think, I know for sure a lot of these guys who have been in prison because of their discipline have been in prison, and the fact that they lost that time, they're hungry.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the guys I've met that, in my passing as far as doing time with, now they're out, they're all balling. Like, one friend got a construction company, my other friend got a trucking company, my other friend got, he's doing like apps and stuff. My other friend got a gym. My other guy, he's the biggest YouTuber, one of the biggest YouTubers out there. So these guys have a drive already, but like you said, it was just misdirected.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of taking that drive and, refocusing it, man, and really putting together, like you said, that almost like that support group where, these guys realize you're not alone, because I mean, it's no different than I see like guys in the military who come back and, are dealing with issues where they were maybe in a war type situation, and now they need a support group so that they can have an outlet to kind of decompress and, just talk about things you're dealing with. I know for myself, I held in a lot of just like emotions and stuff, because like, who are you gonna tell? In jail, you're not gonna cry. If people are weak, you cry, you're weak.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're crying because you're weak. You're dealing with, there's emotions, man. There's stuff you're dealing with that sometimes comes up, but you try to suppress that because you're like, oh, I'm tougher than that. So when you get out and you're dealing with life and you're just trying to figure out like, man, okay, what do I do? What direction do I go in? And sometimes, man, I know for a guy who's a gangster or whatever, he don't want anybody to see that side of him. And so knowing that you have a support group, I think that's a major thing, man, moving forward for a lot of these guys who have done time, who are trying to make changes in their life, positive changes.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I feel we all need mentors. And if we're surrounding ourselves with people who are at that next level we want to be at, and we're getting coached or guided and getting that support consistently, we feel empowered because of that. Versus not having people we could turn to, not having that support system, feeling alone, you feel hopeless. And when people feel hopeless, they go back to old ways. They don't know anything better because they haven't developed those skills or those habits. And then the emotional component is huge. As men growing up, we hear like, don't cry, don't show weakness. And then obviously in the prison system, you can't do that at all. And that messes a lot of people up because then you have an outburst of anger, you're irritable, you can't control your emotions, and people get in wrecks because of that. And one of the things that started to change my life was finding an outlet that helped me to express myself in a way that was therapeutic, and that was through writing. So when I was locked up in the county jail and I was looking at that life sentence, I still had all this baggage from my past that was affecting me. I was abusing drugs and alcohol for a decade because I didn't want to face the reality that my parents left me, that, my life just crumbled in the blink of an eye. I went down this dark path. And so I would just abuse drugs and alcohol to numb myself. But I didn't deal with the emotion. I didn't deal with what I was facing throughout that time and process it. So then in the county jail, I started writing. And I felt like a release every time I would write. I started writing almost like a novel of just my life and letters of forgiveness to my parents and just letting go of all the stuff that I was holding on to. And that changed me, man. I never felt more free than in that moment than I ever had in my life. And I was in a jail cell. And I couldn't believe that. So I know a lot of people don't know how to express themselves, or they think talking about the past or their problems isn't a good thing. We're not supposed to talk about it. We're supposed to keep it in and be strong. But that just causes us harm internally over and over.
No, I totally agree. And that's one of the reasons why, I kind of start this channel with Big Ant, was to talk about a lot of this stuff and to, through my life and what I experienced, kind of let it resonate with the people who watch the channel, and hopefully they can learn something from what I experienced. All these different things, childhood, growing up like this, doing that. And it's been very successful, man. We reached a lot of kids because, sometimes hearing it from your parents, you're like, oh man, they trying to lecture me, blah, blah, blah. But you hear it from somebody else and it's, you get a totally different message. So I think, it's great, man, what you're doing. And, it's putting that message out there, starting those support groups, these conferences, because, we need more things like that. These kids in these OG, they're lost, man. These kids, you see them and they're running around. They don't know, it's like every day, man. I mean, it used to be back in the day, you might see a kid do something here and there on the news, but like, dude, literally it's every day, carjacking, this and that. I mean, it's crazy, man. And it's like, they do something, then do you think now you carjacked, and then you didn't get away with it, and then you got caught. Now you got 5 charges. You're looking at 50 years. Yeah. And all you was doing was trying to get home. But you decided to carjack some dude. I mean, how stupid. So, it's just insane, man. But I'm glad we're able to, have this conversation and to put a lot of this stuff out there, man. And I'm sure somebody watching it will get something important from this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there has to be a different narrative at some point, right? Because you see people just repeating the same stuff over and over. And I was going down that same path. I saw it growing up from my dad, from my uncles, from everyone. And that wasn't the life I wanted, though. Something inside of me knew I wanted more, something better. And, going to prison gave me a chance to change, honestly. It gave me a chance to change for the better. And I was able to recognize that early on and use that time to my advantage versus coming out worse or not coming out at all. So, the younger people or people who are just going through tough times in their life right now, like, that's my mission, to show them that change is possible, that you can come from a broken home or you can battle addiction and you still have the capability to change your life.
Hey, and there you have it. Big Herc fresh out and Sean Crane getting down.